Hi, I'm Cecile, and welcome to this series of conversations with expats about different aspects of being an expat. I'm originally from Canada, but have been living in Turkey for the past 14 years. Today I'm going to speak with Mauricio Araya, a former colleague of mine who lives in Istanbul. And we're going to be speaking specifically about where home is and the concept of home when you're living abroad, especially when you have been in that host country for a very long time. And I won't tell you too much more about Mauricio because he's going to do that himself. But once again, welcome and enjoy my conversation. So, thank you again for doing this. Let's dive right in. So, where are you from and where are you now?
I am from Santiago, Chile, and I am now in Istanbul, Turkey.
All right. So where do you consider home to be?
I've been thinking about this for many years, actually, and I think the answer that I would give you today would be here in Istanbul, since both my wife and my son are here. That would have been different before them. I would have answered differently before they were born. I would have said Chile for sure.
Yeah.
But now, since I've gotten married and had a child, it's changed, and now it's definitely here in Istanbul with them.
Okay. Yeah. And of course, I asked this because this is something I wonder a lot about too. So, do you consider yourself an expat?
Actually, it's been a long time since I don't. I just consider myself, I know it's a bit corny, but I consider myself a world or a global citizen.
Yeah.
I've traveled around so much and I've lived in many different places, and never really feeling like I fit in, even where my home is Chile, whether that be Chile or Toronto where I grew up, or the many other countries that I lived in afterwards. So I don't know, I think I've just taken on this other view of the world. I mean, I just feel like I'm part of the world, and that's it. There's no really
Yeah.
belonging anywhere, that kind of feeling.
Yeah. I know that you grew up in Toronto, obviously, because I know a little bit about you. So I was very curious to see what you would answer when I said, where do you consider home to be? And of course, you said Chile, your birthplace. So how old were you when you guys left?
I was about 6 months old. We left Chile. We'll just leave it at due to politics. We via Mexico. We ended up in Canada, and I was about 1 year old when I arrived there until I was almost 18.
Okay.
So wonderful, absolutely loved it. And if you would have asked me back then, of course, it would have been Canada, my friends and everything else. But things have changed since then. So.
Okay. So when you were 18, you left Canada, or?
Yes, we moved to Chile, and I finished university in Chile. And unfortunately, the situation wasn't very good for us teachers, and especially PE teachers. I did my time. I worked in the shall we say, in the economically challenged neighborhoods, etc. And yeah, I wasn't so safe, and I was running from one place to another just to make ends meet. And I had an opportunity to go abroad, and I jumped at the opportunity.
Yeah. So where did you go first?
Cruise ships, actually. I worked on cruise ships for 2 years. Yeah, I worked for one cruise line, which I won't mention, and the second one was Disney.
Oh, yes.
Disney, and that was absolutely fantastic. It was wonderful, from the crazy adults with the Mickey Mouse tattoos and haircuts and everything to the wonderful children that we met there, like through Make-A-Wish Foundation, etc. I mean, it was a great experience. At that time in my life, it was absolutely wonderful. I would never go back, but at that stage in my life, it was wonderful.
Yeah. It's funny how things can be right for us at a certain time in our lives, and then it's just
Yes.
not right for us anymore.
Yes, I
So,
agree.
I've never been on a cruise ship, but I can imagine, even just like metaphorically, that that's like the ultimate example of home being where you are, or home being anywhere or everywhere, or, as you put it, being a citizen of the world.
Yes, absolutely. And that it was a mobile home actually. It was absolutely fantastic. I mean, you have 3,000 plus people, at least on the ship I worked on. Um, and yeah, your family is there. I mean, they change rapidly, but you have a few core people that are always there. And it was, yeah, that was my home for about 2 years.
So, other than Chile and Toronto, Canada,
Hmm.
is
Yep.
now you've been in Turkey how long? And is this the longest you've ever been in a place other than those two?
Yes. So this is now, I'm just completing my 7th year, and I'll start my 8th now in August. And it's the where I've stayed the longest. After Canada was, well, almost 18 years, 17 years we'll call it. Chile was actually less than that. Um, yeah, and now here. Japan was 4. Sorry, New York was 5 actually. New York was 5.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Which is also a nice period of time.
absolutely.
Yeah. So then let me ask you this. Now you're in Turkey, you're in Istanbul, and in your heart you feel like this is now home. So
Yep.
is the way you approach making friends different? Has it changed from when you were in other, in New York, in Japan, certainly in Chile and Toronto?
Yeah. I would say, and this is just my opinion, but I find there to be a big similarity between our cultures, the at least the Chilean and the Turkish cultures. Um, in my experience, I want to try and avoid stereotypes, but in my experience, I've come across some very like outgoing, wonderful, vibrant, Turks here, and who become my friends. And in Chile, it was much the same. It was just, very boisterous, outspoken, just positive, happy people. And I just had a wonderful experience here. So I can't say anything but good things, except for when you're trying to get onto a metro or something like that. But other than that detail,
Yeah.
things have been wonderful here. Yeah.
Yeah. And your Turkish is excellent, if I remember correctly.
Working on it. Yeah.
Have you always learned the language, the host language of the places you go? Like, I mean, I guess Japan is the only other example. Like, I think you learned Japanese as well, didn't you?
I did, but basic. I would call it, shall we say, taxi or street Japanese. I mean, it was enough to go to a restaurant, give directions in a taxi. I wouldn't be able to talk, have a full conversation about politics or things like that. At the time, it was very basic, rudimentary, but yeah, I was able to survive with that. And then the other countries, I was, yeah, and that was just above my head, well above my head.
Do you think the reason you've learned Turkish so well now is because your attitude is different, or is it just a function of
Mm,
how long you've been here?
good point. I think because because I wasn't able to uh, become fluent in Japanese, and I really felt that because I really truly wanted to know more about the culture, and I believe to do so you need to absolutely understand their language, and be able to communicate. And I didn't. I felt really bad, felt and still feel really bad about that. So someday I hope to retake it. Um, and so I didn't want to commit that same mistake, being here in Turkey. And so from the very beginning, I was offered a place to stay here on campus, and I denied it, and I said I would come, but only if I could live off campus to start off.
Yeah.
And that's how, yeah. And I started off on the right foot, actually.
Good for you. So that's, if someone were asking you for advice about how to maybe,
Hmm.
integrate into a host culture, you would say learn the language, make
Absolutely,
sure you're mingling with locals. Am I right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree 100%.
Okay. So I think it's fair to say you feel integrated into Turkish society.
For the most part, yes.
Would you like to comment on that? Maybe tell me a bit about that.
Sure. Um, I would say for the most part, just because I mean the cultures are very different. My wife's parents are religious, but not to an extreme where they wouldn't have accepted me had it been differently.
So your
But
wife is
yes,
Turkish, just to,
correct. Yes,
your wife is Turkish. Yeah.
Yes, he's Turkish. Sorry, I should have started by saying that. Um, yeah, it's most of the time it's wonderful. Most of the time it's wonderful, but every now and again, even with my wife, I forget often that her native tongue is not Spanish or English, and so in communicating as well, you have to be careful with that. But then just the small nuances of each language, when I speak Turkish, it's uh, I often can't express exactly what I want to say, um, like I could in English or Spanish, of course. The culture-wise, it's just so vibrant. It's wonderful, and it just it's so diverse as well, much more so than in Chile. Although Chile has changed in the recent decade or so, but here I just find it to be so diverse. I mean, you find, especially in Istanbul, it's a melting pot,
Yeah.
and just you just need to go downtown and you can see that. Things, of course, now are a bit different, shall we say, but in general, that's what I really like about this country. The food, is just from all different parts. I mean, you're living in a place now where kebabs are, everywhere, and here in Istanbul, I don't know exactly what their main dish is, but um, that's a huge part for me. Being a vegetarian, that's very important for me. And here, I can, it's heaven for me. So that's and also another important part about this culture for me.
So again, just to clarify, when you say the diversity in Istanbul, I think you're talking about not necessarily international diversity, although it is an international capital, but I think you're talking about how Turkey is such a diverse country. Uh,
Correct.
Maybe not everybody knows, and in Istanbul, you have people from all over Turkey,
Yes.
right? It's kind of hard and rare to find a true Istanbulu in Istanbul, right?
Yes, yes. Often, with the taxi drivers, I'll have a difficult time with the Turkish there because in the black, there some of them will be from the Black Sea, and that shall we say, it's almost a different dialect, and they often do actually speak different languages in the Black Sea, other than Turkish. And of course, let's not forget our brothers, the Kurds, that are here as well. And so we have that, and they're Turks as well, and from Turkmenistan, etc., and from the different surrounding territories as well. So in that regard, I mean, I don't think you can find this in many other places in the world.
Yeah, yeah. Well, your wife has come to visit us and stay with us here in the South,
Mm.
and I hope you will both come together with your son and do a family visit. And I'd be so, excited and proud to show you, Adana. It's so different from Istanbul. When I compare them, it feels like a whole different country.
Mm.
And although people here love to eat meat, um, the amount of fresh produce, the fruit and vegetables, is, I think, a vegetarian's heaven, or a vegetable lover's heaven for sure.
Mm. I would love to go.
I hope that you guys will come when this pandemic is behind us. So that was the end of part one of my conversation with Mauricio. If you'd like to continue listening, just click on the link. Bye.